Today's lesson: God unconditionally loves. He doesn't give up easily. Another thing to mention: our impurity can cause distance. Obedience: God is pure and holy and sent His Son to redeem us. If we love Christ, we will obey His commandments. We just see a lot to do with faith through obedience all over the Bible, and it's just something I'm thankful for. I can draw near to Him. A loving Father disciplines. Hebrews 12:5 and Proverbs 3:12. Most of our best memories are connected to feelings of being safe, loved, and cared for. Maybe your grandmother would rub your back when you were sick. God can heal our lands. Most of the time we see people sick mentally or physically, and you see amazing things that God and His perspective can do to aid that. So even more than a grandmother, we have a God that is always there. Maybe your spouse took extra chores while you're struggling at work. Maybe a friend sat with you and listened while you were poured out grief and frustration. That value felt and being respected. There's so much that comes by listening, and God, He always listens. He always hears our prayers, and it's just something that we can be thankful for all the time. There are many ways people can make us feel loved. Discussion starter: loved and cared for. Share about a time you felt especially loved or cared for. Sitting in the pews upon brokenness came healing and tears. That blessings in the midst of unending cycles shows me He sees in the perfect time, perfect place, and perfect person to relate and guide me. All of this has happened countless times, and just the Holy Ghost and how He works in and through us and with us, and just resonates beyond surface level, the flesh. It's amazing. He takes care of our hearts, folks. Along all the judgment and destruction foretold in the minor prophets, there is also a strong message of God's faithful love. Even though His people repeatedly betrayed Him, God could not bring Himself to break His covenant. He's true to His promises, folks, all the time when with them. Instead, He called them again and again to return to Him and be completely restored by His love. Part 1. The Father's compassion, heartbroken and angry. Hosea 1-7. So I looked up a couple of references as well for this verse, and this is going into perspectives containing within Exodus 14 and 15. But the reference that I seen was for Matthew's 2:15. And it's just crazy because we can see how people look to Baal, and as Herod was seen a king. And so Jesus was supposed to be that one on the throne, and He wouldn't see that until after His death, as the blood trickled down. Okay, so something else here is, if we truly love someone, we wouldn't enable behavior that wouldn't honor important people. Think of if you had a boss, or even important relationships concerning family, just to be able to not despise chastening and just take it in humbly as constructive criticism. There's even something in the New Testament that talks about that. And so I'll also have all this provided below and a good perspective of how these verses come into play. Hosea 11 likely was written before Israel fell to Assyrians, when Baal worship was a regular practice in Israel. In the first 7 verses, God describes the past, present, and immediate future of His relationship with Israel. God's profound heartbreak and anger was evident as He compared His selfless love with Israel's rebellion and indifference. Their sins would not, in this case, be washed away too easily. Obedience is so important when you have the privilege of hearing of the Most High. As a loving father, he had called Israel out of Egyptian slavery and into freedom. But instead of coming towards him, Israel moved further away from him to worship false gods, graven images. I imagine they endured too much, but really to cling to God in those moments when we endure so much is where the most happens. Some of those days that I had found myself in those pews crying were the hardest days to go to church. Perhaps they questioned why, too. A geological free energy wasn't something that maybe crossed their minds too easily. I could imagine 400 years in captivity would really cause somebody's roots to become bitter. God had stooped down to teach Israel to walk, verse 3, leading them with the law, but Israel ignored God, apparently thinking that they had learned to walk on their own. Pride shrouds our ability to learn, folks. It also just self-righteousness appears out of it when we could just see that God is the source of light, that he is the source of all good things. And so I wrote down the golden calf here too, because knowledge, craftsmanship, and ego. And in this case, it's ego, but when we become puffed up like that, we're not really able to see everything that he would have for us. The metaphor shifts in verse 4 as God described how he cared for Israel like a beloved animal, leading them gently and removing their harness to follow the rest and be fed from God's own hand. God, he provided, he made covenants, he even probably gave them knowledge, perhaps. Paul speaks of meats, in the New Testament. So when he talked about meats, there's just a lot that could mean. And so as a beloved animal, think of a lamb, how they're pure and their wool is of great importance. It clothes and literally made it necessary for survival. Without a lamb and their wool, how would we have stayed warm? And so compassion and connections with traits of animals are some things that I dove into a little bit. Dogs, they were obedient. They had a pure form of love from the mind, and there was also a flip side. So Israel continually betrayed God. Since the people refused to return to him, they would return to Egypt in a sense, that they would once again be enslaved. And so it really shows a lack of value when you continually stab somebody in the back. And I could only imagine how we endure some things like that. Here, God put up with it through the whole Old Testament. Okay, so there's also a verse here in Romans 8, 19, and 20 that I would love to read because it kind of applies here. For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willing by reason with him of him who hath subjected in the same hope. Because the creature itself had also been delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. Really, these experiences should teach us. We should really take it in and learn from the things we endure. And so this is talking about a creature and subjected, right? We're all chastened. In my experience, it's never by the Father or the Son, but I'll let you put that last part together. And so this time by the Assyrians. Because of Israel's lack of reverence, which would be a deep respect, and love for God, judgment was coming. What words or phases in this passage shows that God is heartbroken or angry? Well, he was continually betrayed. They worshipped graven images. There was so much effort given on his part, and it seemed like they were ungrateful. Plan would lead them back to subjection. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good day.